Party people in the place to be. It is the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, Wednesday edition. We're doing things a little differently today with a little stash, start, and cut. Let's get right to it and let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back inside the lab, everybody. That is the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with Steele and Flip. Like I said, it's Wednesday edition. The days are ticking off the calendar, people. We are getting antagonizingly close to the regular season puck drop. I cannot wait. And thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Steele and I see you out there, and what we especially see is all this interest in the fan-based fantasy league. Steele and I are fired up to go toe-to-toe with our listeners, our fans out there. Thank you for showing us all that interest because, Steele, we are going to do a little stash, start, and cut today with some big young players. That's coming up fantasy-wise, but this league is starting to pick up steam, so I'm getting real pumped up for that.
Yeah, we've caught a lot of interest. I think we've gotten over 15 or 20 DMs on our Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast Twitter account. I've actually gotten a couple of DMs on my personal Twitter account as well. So just want to reiterate this. Make sure you're DMing us on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast Twitter account with your email and confirmation that you subscribe to the YouTube channel and followed all of our Twitter accounts, including Flip's and mine personal accounts as well. But super excited. The poll is already out as well. I put the poll out this morning or yesterday morning. There's actually three options on it right now. There's $10, $20, and $30 plus. So far, the $20 is winning the race right now. So we'll see what happens at the end of the day. But more money makes me more excited to win this fantasy hockey league with our fans and listeners and get a little banter going between you and I again, Flip.
Yeah, and hey, we are going to announce who is in the league on Friday. Thank you for showing up and showing that interest. The draft will be on Monday. We know it's Thanksgiving up here in Canada, but after you're done with that turkey, slide onto the laptop and get it done fantasy-wise with your boys from the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. We just needed to drop that little bit of administrative note off the top of today's episode because we are focusing on three young studs today, Steele. We've talked a lot about one of them, but the other two, not so much. We're going to do a first-time segment here. Shout out to you for a good idea. Stash, start, or cut with Tim Stutzle, Cole Caufield, and Jason Robertson. Those are three very intriguing fantasy names and three very intriguing young pieces on these teams, Steele, that number one, I want to talk about Jason Robertson. Before we get to where we're doing with these three guys, the situation in Dallas this offseason has been an intriguing one. And Jason Robertson, Jake Ottinger got his deal, but Jason Robertson, after a 79-point season last year, is still an RFA. Yeah. We are only a few days away from puck drop. They thought they were going to get it done at the start of training camp. He has not been with the team. There's rumors flying around. You saw a tweet about maybe the Buffalo Sabres kicking tires. I've heard some rumblings about the Devils as well. There are some interesting angles where this could go, but I just want your take on this because, I listened to 32 Thoughts, the podcast, Elliot Friedman, and I'll get your take on this. They are apparently very close, but these two sides are frustrated with this situation, and I don't know what Dallas is doing because this kid should just get his money, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's what it seems to be like, even with the Jake Ottinger contract as well. It seems like it took a while and that there was a little frustration from both sides trying to negotiate this contract for Jake Ottinger, and that's what's going on with Jason Robertson right now. And that's also what happens when you make these massive contracts, looking at Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn, and they're not living up to those expectations. Like the front office hands are pretty much tied right now. Yeah. But this guy deserves to get paid. He's the best player on their team. That's no question for me. He's ahead of Miro Heiskanen. He's ahead of Jake Ottinger. He is the best player. He's 23 years old, and he has so much potential, and the ceiling just continues to get higher and higher for me.
Yeah, I just, I am not a GM. I am not representation and agent, but the fact that he's come off such a good season, and here's the stat that really should be the biggest bargaining chip at the table, aside from the clear ones in points and goals scored. This kid had 11 game-winning goals last year, Steele.
Yes.
On his stick alone, he won you 11 games. The Dallas Stars can't afford to mess around with this, and I don't understand if you're this close already. Pay the kid his money and let's move on, because I'm going to make this point when we talk about stash, start, or cut, and I know you're not going to like it, but why would you piss off your star player when you're this close and after such a good season? 11 game-winning goals should kind of put the money down on the table and get this kid paid. That's how I'm looking at it. I'm intrigued to hear what you have to say about who you're doing, the stash start cut with. Let's get to that in one sec, but we got to pay the bills with betonline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles on every single game you can find. As always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all of your sport wagering information, with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores from every single sport out there. It is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Yeah, Flip, and I think we should get going with this fun little segment here of start, bench, and cut. And, we were just talking about Jason Robertson, and that's who I'm starting as my first left winger out of these three players. These three players, they're all young, 23, 21, 20 years old. Two of them drafted in the first round, but Jason Robertson, second round, 39th overall pick. Back in 2017. And like you said, he had an absolutely phenomenal season last year.
Yeah.
Over the 2 seasons he's played so far in the NHL, he's just under a point per game, 125 points in 128 games, an 18.6 shooting percentage, which is crazy high. I know it's high right now.
Yeah, that's
obviously it's gonna drop down. There's no question about that. But 14 to 15% shooting percentage is not out of the realm. It's not out of the question here. He's just that talented. And what I really like about this player is that he's not overly flashy. He just puts himself in the right position, and the puck just seems to follow him wherever he is on the ice. And I got to say, 90% of his goals come from below the hash marks or surrounding the blue crease. He has wicked hands in close. He's able to get by defenders and by the goalies from in close. Quick hands, great hand-eye coordination. Really likes to deflect the puck from the sides of besides the post. And like I said, he's always putting himself in the right position. Obviously, I think he can get up to 85 points this upcoming season if he plays a full season. I think he played 74 games last year. And 74? Like you said, 74 games last year. And like you said, he's got ice in his veins. Ice in the veins for Jason Robertson. 11 game-winning goals, tied for first in the league with 4 other players. I believe it was Leon Draisaitl, Steven Stamkos, and I think it was Chris Kreider as well. So he is a clutch player, and the Dallas Stars need to sign this guy. And if they don't, he might miss a couple of weeks, which will obviously hurt their chances.
Yeah, he's an RFA with no deal. We talked about that. And look, these are 3 really good young players. And I think, Jason Robertson had his stepping out season. And I think you're going to see the 2 other players here, Cole Caufield and Tim Stutzle, have theirs this season. And I'm just going to take a bit of a different angle here for the sake of having this conversation, because heading into this season, I think it's clear Jason Robertson has earned that recognition as being probably the most deadly offensive player of these 3. But the ceiling and the book is out on the other 2 in terms of what they can do. We saw Jason Robertson prove that he can get it done at an elite level last year, but I'm not starting him, Steele. I am sticking to my predictions this year. I'm going with Tim Stutzle as the guy I'm starting, and let me explain why. And we know what's happening in Ottawa on the back end. We know our issues with the defense. But that offense might be elite this year. If they can add a piece, I saw you asking the question, if they add a Jacob Chychrun, if they add a piece on the blue line, do they become a contender in that Atlantic division? My answer is yes, because of how elite that offense is going to be. You mentioned the ability and the ice in the veins of Jason Robertson. Tim Stutzle is 20 years old. He is a 3rd overall draft pick, and I just think we haven't seen nearly the best out of him yet. This is a bold prediction, but I said 80 points this year for Tim Stutzle. Jason Robertson had 79 last year. I could see 79, 80 from Stutzle this year. And the reason why I would actually, and I'm not going to give away my end of it, so I'm going to wait to talk about Jason Robertson because we need to drag this episode out a little bit, but I'll leave it at this with Stutzle. And I appreciate you letting me have my little preamble here because I think maybe the clear choice is Robertson. But I just see big things coming from all the players around Stutzle this year as well. So even if he gets off to struggles scoring the goals, I think he could have 40, 50 assists playing with the Brinkat, Kachuk, and others. I don't know, Steele. I just also see some of these teams that Ottawa's going up against in that division. Red Wings, Leafs, they are going to be some high-scoring games. This Ottawa Senators team is going to score a ton, even by default.
And like we've talked about, the top 6, the top 2 lines, the 6 forward group they have going is just absolutely talented. But I just don't think you can put him above Jason Robertson. And obviously, Robertson's not signed, so that plays a part into putting him as a starter and putting Stutzle on the bench. Exactly, and I completely understand. But even with Robertson not signed right now, he's just to me, he's far ahead of Tim Stutzle right now. I'm not quite there with you, but over the last couple of weeks, while we've talked about him, the more you've talked about him, the more we talked about him with the Locked On Sens guys as well. As well, looking at his game highlights, his stats, the more enticing Stutzle has become to me. I am becoming more and more of a fan of him, but I just don't think he's ahead of Robertson right now. I think he puts up more than 200 shots this year. I believe he can get over 150 hits, 65 blocks, and that's just a bonus with the point production, like you said, that he could potentially get this season. I don't think he gets 80 points. I still think he's around 65, 70 points. So still better than last year, but not that high, not 20 plus difference in my opinion. I think his shooting percentage stays the same, 12.5% on the shooting percentage. But like you said, he's surrounded by a lot of talent now. And, you know, we saw it last year with a couple of injuries, like especially with Drake Batherson. And obviously it was a different lineup last year. They've gotten a lot better. I'm putting Tim Stutzle on my bench. And that clearly leaves Cole Caufield getting cut from my team.
Hey, this is why I'm continuing down the spicy take path because I'll end here. Let me just explain it all. We'll just keep this episode nice and tight because this is also the other angle I'm taking with the Dallas Stars. I think that line last year with Roope Hintz and Joe Pavelski and Jason Robertson, they peaked. They topped out at what they could do last year, and that's not a bad one.
No.
Joe Pavelski is not going to have 80 points again this season. I just don't see the chemistry again with those 3. That's why I'm saying, Steele, last year was an amazing year for that trio. I'm not saying those 2 players have peaked, but that combination is not going to have the success that they had last season. That's just not going to happen. Maybe Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn do have those bounce back seasons that you're predicting. Those are big ifs. But if that could happen, I could see the Jason Robertson point total going even higher. But that's a big if. Those are the angles I'm taking here. He's a little bit cheesed. What if he goes to another team? How can you really predict what he's going to do? These are some of these caveats I have to throw out because he was that good last year. And that's why he's getting cut. I'm going with Cole Caufield on the bench because I think Caufield is going to score 30 to 40 goals this year and have a ton of opportunity. These are bold takes, Steele, and they're not popular ones. But until I see Jason Robertson on the ice, I would be concerned about having a guy who might not even play for a month into the season or rumors galore. He goes to the Buffalo Sabres. You think he's going to score 85 points? Because I don't. But we'll see what happens.
Look, I completely agree with you that Pavelski's not going to put up 80 points right now. But the Dallas Stars, Roope, Hintz, Pavelski, and Robertson were one of the top 5 lines in the league last year. Yeah, Pavelski might not put up the same production, but Robertson, but Pavelski's production might fall off a little bit, but Robertson's is going to go up more. He's not going to put, if he plays a full 82 games, he had 79 points last year. Look, obviously, if he's not playing in the first couple of weeks, he's not going to put up that many points, obviously, because he's missing a few games. But his potential and his ceiling is higher. And I can't believe you just said that that line peaked last year. I know Pavelski is 38 years old, but he's still a very talented player in the league right now.
I just like what you're saying is completely on point, and what you said about them being, the top 5 line in the NHL is also on point. It's just I don't see them being able to replicate that success. That's how good it was last year. Also, shout out to just Jason Robertson in general, a good Niagara Ice Dog talent. I love me some Niagara Ice Dog action because I live down in the Niagara region. I don't know, Steele. Actually, shout out to the Score who did a top 10 lines in the NHL just yesterday. They had them as the 7th best line, in the league behind Kaprizov, Hartman, Zuccarello, Kane, McDavid, Yamamoto, Marchand, Bergeron, DeBrusque. Those are straight stats last year. Anyway, I'm making a hard sell on this because of 2 reasons. The caveat with the contract, the caveat with I just don't see the success being replicated with that line, and Dallas doesn't score as much. That's just the facts. And I'll say this about Cole Caufield. That kid still put up 23 goals in 67 games last year, struggling. We saw how good he was once Marty St. Louis came in. Now a full off season with Marty St. Louis, some more chemistry, some more time. I think Caufield is going to have a 6 season, 43 points in 67 games last year. I'm going to say he pops 60 and at least 30 goals.
Look, I think I see where you're coming from with starting Tim Stutzle, but the fact that you have Cole Caufield ahead of Jason Robertson is just mind-boggling to me right now.
Thank you.
You're talking about the Dallas Stars not scoring a ton of goals, and the Dallas Stars, that line just peaked last year. The Montreal Canadiens are not any better. There's only 2 players on Montreal that I would even consider drafting, and that's Cole Caufield and Nick Suzuki. Everyone else, I won't even bother looking at right now. And like you said, yeah, he has the potential of reaching 30 goals, potential maybe, but I don't see that. They don't have a ton of talent up front. They don't have a ton of goal scorers up front as well. If he plays a full season, I can see him recording 55 to 60 points, which is obviously less than what I'm predicting for Robertson and Stutzle to have. But like I said, I don't like this Montreal Canadiens lineup. I said that in yesterday's episode as well. He only put up 7 blocks and 18 hits as well. So those underlying stats in the other categories are not gonna help you fantasy wise. So yeah, he might put up 60 points, but those underlying stats, they're just not good enough. So look, if he falls down to me in a draft in the right round, yeah, I'm obviously gonna take him, but I'm not taking him in the 6th or 7th round.
Yeah, I hear you. And again, we're talking about different things now a little bit because stash, bench, quit, and, statistical categories. It depends. It depends what league you're in, because if you're in a basic league, look, 23 goals from Cole Caufield last year in the setup that the Montreal Canadiens had, 23 goals in 67 games. He's going to score 30 this year. That's not a bold take. He is also a deadly shooter. And from what I've seen in the preseason this year, I think he's going to be good. I haven't seen Jason Robertson play this year. We know he's good. We're not taking away from that. This is the angle I'm taking because, look, 2 sides are frustrated. You're hearing that from Elliot Friedman. They're getting close, but there's still nothing done. There's concerns there. If you listen to the Dallas or the Stars Locked On podcast, he's concerned as well. But look, any of these 3 players are going to hold value in specific leagues. Yes, Robertson and Stutzle are probably the 2 clear choices, but with all of this madness with negotiations going around and people being frustrated, that makes me nervous, Steele, especially because Robertson is pegged to go so high in many drafts. You don't want to get burned with a guy who you're taking in those top 4. I would rather be careful and go with 2 guys that I know are going to get a ton of points this year. But that's just me because, yes, Jason Robertson is probably the best overall player out of all 3 of these. But now I'm just hedging bets, Steele. So, look, I'm fired up. My voice is going. I just need some puck to drop on this season. You know what I'm saying?
I'll make a bold prediction, and we can make a side bet right now.
Please.
I will say, with full confidence, even if Robertson misses the first couple of weeks of the season because of contract negotiations, I still think he puts up more points than Cole Caufield. He will put up more points than Cole Caufield, even if he misses the first couple of weeks of the NHL regular season.
Yeah, I don't think that's a super bold prediction, but I'll take some odds offline. We'll figure this out, but we'll definitely sprinkle a bet. I'll say this. Cole Caufield scores more goals than Jason Robertson this year. That might be a bit of a bolder take, but we'll maybe
that is a bolder take.
We'll do a couple of bets, side bets galore. We'll see though, Steele, because honestly, I'm just kind of confused at what the Dallas Stars think they're doing here, and I don't need to say it again, but
The hands are tied. They're tied.
Pay the kid his money. We'll see what happens, though. Yeah, hey, we might have to do another one of these bench cut start things because clearly it's making me a little hot under the collar.
Yeah, you're warming up. Hey, we're both feeling a little bit under the weather, so it's nice that we're getting a little fired up right now. But look, I like the fact that we did this the first segment here on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Many more to come when the season starts. Obviously, we'll do one every couple of weeks, as the stats continue to grow, as the games continue to move on. But really happy with this. I don't agree with you with the Jason Robertson take. That's okay. Still love you, bud. But thanks everyone for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Once again, if you haven't DM'd us yet and you want to join the Fan Base Fantasy League, make sure you follow us on all of our Twitter accounts. DM us your email as well on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast account. And make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. We're almost at 500 subscribers. We want to hit 500 before the season starts. So keep hammering that subscribe button. We appreciate and love all the support our listeners and fans have out there in supporting this podcast. We love jumping on and recording every single day for you guys, talking fantasy, talking bets, talking gambling. That's what we do. That's what we love to do. So thank you so much. We appreciate you out there. Thank you again for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Good luck with all your bets out there, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.